The local grocery store was buzzing with the usual weekday chaos, shopping carts rolling over polished floors, employees restocking shelves, and customers hurrying through the aisles. Among them was Peter, a young man with Down syndrome, wearing his brand new uniform on his first day of work. Though nervous, he was determined to prove himself. His manager, Jack, had welcomed him warmly that morning. "We're glad to have you, Peter. Just take your time and do your best," he had said with a reassuring pat on the shoulder. Peter nodded eagerly. "I will, sir. I promise." As the hours passed, Peter worked hard, carefully bagging groceries and assisting customers. Though some coworkers exchanged doubtful glances at his slower pace, he didn't let it deter him. "I belong here," he told himself, but not everyone shared that belief. As Peter finished packing a customer's bags at the checkout, a loud sigh cut through the background noise. He didn't immediately react, too focused on his task, but as he turned to greet the next customer, his heart sank. A woman with an air of impatience and entitlement, heels clicking sharply against the tiles, pushed her cart forward with force. Her cold stare landed on Peter, scanning him with clear disapproval. "Unbelievable," she muttered under her breath. "This is what passes for service these days?" Peter swallowed hard, keeping his polite smile. "Good afternoon, ma'am," he said, his voice quiet but steady. "I'll be happy to help." The woman, Karen, as some customers whispered her name, rolled her eyes dramatically. "Let's just hope this doesn't take forever." Peter's hands trembled slightly as he reached for the first item in her cart. He had faced judgment before, but something about this woman's hostility made his nerves even worse. Unbeknownst to Karen, however, she wasn't just being watched by the customers around her. Near the aisles, half hidden among the shelves, stood a man observing the situation closely. He blended in with the crowd, dressed in simple clothes, his posture relaxed yet alert. His sharp eyes followed every movement, every word exchanged. And when Karen's cruel words cut deeper, he took a step forward. Peter focused on his work, carefully placing each item into the grocery bags. His hands moved with precision, but his confidence wavered under the weight of Karen's piercing stare. Her impatience grew with each passing second. "Seriously?" she scoffed, tapping her manicured nails against the counter. "At this rate, I'll be retired before you finish." Peter's cheeks flushed, but he continued packing, determined to stay professional. His manager had told him that not all customers would be kind, but he never expected someone to be outright cruel. Karen sighed dramatically, turning to the cashier beside Peter. "Why would you hire someone like this?" she asked, lowering her voice just enough to sound insincere. "It's just not fair to paying customers who expect decent service." The cashier stiffened, glancing nervously at Peter, unsure of how to respond. Other customers nearby looked on, some in shock, others too uncomfortable to step in. But Peter heard every word. His hands slowed, his fingers gripping the next item just a little tighter. He refused to let her words bring him down, but they stung nonetheless. And still, the silent observer in the store remained unnoticed. Near the produce section, Keanu Reeves had seen the entire interaction unfold. He wasn't just any customer browsing the aisles. He had been standing there for a while, quietly observing. He had seen Peter's enthusiasm at the beginning of his shift. He had noticed the way Peter carefully greeted every customer with warmth and sincerity. And now, he was watching that light slowly dim under the weight of Karen's words. Keanu's jaw tightened. He had dealt with people like her before, people who thought they were above others, who looked down on those they didn't understand. And he wasn't about to let it slide. With an easy but purposeful stride, Keanu left his position near the shelves and walked straight toward the checkout line. Karen was too focused on Peter's slow pace to notice the quiet storm headed her way. But she was about to. Karen let out another exaggerated sigh, as Peter carefully placed a carton of eggs into the bag, his hands steady, but slower than most. "Come on, this isn't rocket science," she muttered, shaking her head. Just as she opened her mouth to say something else, a calm but firm voice cut through the tension. "Looks like he's doing a great job to me." Karen turned abruptly, startled by the interruption. Standing beside her, looking completely at ease, was none other than Keanu Reeves. The store fell into an immediate hush. A few customers did double takes, recognizing him almost instantly, but no one dared to speak. Even Peter blinked in confusion, unsure if he was imagining things. Karen's annoyance flickered into something else, disbelief. Wait, you're you're Keanu Reeves? She stammered, her entitled tone faltering. Keanu flashed a small smile, but there was no amusement in his eyes. That's me, he said casually before turning his attention back to Peter. And I'd say Peter here is doing his job just fine. Peter's face turned red, not from embarrassment, but from the unexpected support. He struggled to process what was happening. Karen, on the other hand, quickly tried to regain control of the situation. She let out a forced chuckle. I mean, sure, but let's be honest. People don't come to a store like this expecting slow service. Keanu tilted his head slightly as if considering her words. And people don't walk into a store expecting to be publicly humiliated either, he said, his voice still calm, but carrying an unmistakable weight. Karen stiffened. The other customers, sensing something big unfolding, edged closer. Some even pulled out their phones, recording quietly. Keanu leaned slightly against the checkout counter, his gaze never leaving Karen's. You know, he continued, his voice smooth but laced with quiet authority. I've traveled all over the world, met people from every background imaginable, and the thing that always stands out, the thing that actually matters, is kindness. Karen swallowed, but before she could respond, Keanu turned back to Peter, smiling warmly. How's your first day going, man? Peter hesitated, still caught off guard, but then he managed a small smile. It was okay, until now, he admitted. Keanu chuckled. Well, don't let one person ruin it for you. You're doing great. Peter's smile grew, and for the first time since the encounter started, he felt seen. Karen, however, was now visibly uncomfortable. She had come into this store expecting respect, believing she was above people like Peter, but now she was the one under scrutiny, and she didn't like it one bit. Karen's face burned as she glanced around, realizing that nearly everyone in the store was watching. Some customers whispered among themselves, while others held up their phones, capturing every moment. She had expected this to be just another errand, walk in, buy her groceries, and leave. Instead, she had become the center of attention, and not in the way she wanted. For the first time since the confrontation began, she seemed unsure of herself. Look, she said, forcing a stiff smile. I didn't mean anything by it. I was just pointing out that this process is taking longer than it should. Keanu raised an eyebrow. And belittling someone helps how? Karen opened her mouth to argue, but quickly closed it. She had no answer. Keanu sighed, then gestured toward the other employees. These people work hard, every single day. And Peter? He turned toward him with a nod. He's standing here, doing his best, just like the rest of us. Peter looked up, his eyes wide with a mix of gratitude and disbelief. Keanu then looked back at Karen. You don't know his story. You don't know what it took for him to be here. But instead of treating him with kindness, you decided to make his job harder. Karen swallowed hard. I wasn't trying to. Intent doesn't always matter, Keanu interrupted smoothly. Impact does. Karen stood frozen, suddenly feeling very small. The murmurs among the crowd grew louder, a few customers nodding in agreement with Keanu's words. Some even stepped forward. A man in line behind Karen spoke up. Honestly, I think Peter's doing great. I'd rather wait a little longer and know I'm dealing with someone who actually cares about his job. A woman next to him added, Same. People forget how much of a difference kindness makes. Karen's confidence crumbled entirely. She had assumed she would be supported in her complaint. Instead, she was now the one on trial. Keanu exhaled softly, giving her one last look. A person's character isn't about how they treat the people they think are important. It's about how they treat everyone. Karen lowered her gaze. She had lost. Karen stood frozen, the weight of Keanu's words sinking in. She could feel the stares of the customers around her, some disappointed, others silently judging. The confidence she had wielded just moments ago had vanished. She cleared her throat, her voice quieter now. I guess I didn't think about it like that. Keanu simply nodded, his expression calm but firm. Most people don't. But when you stop and actually see people, not just look at them, you realize how much your words and actions matter. Karen swallowed hard, suddenly feeling ashamed. She had spent years moving through life without considering how she treated others. And now, in front of dozens of strangers and Keanu Reeves of all people, she was realizing how small that had made her. The store remained silent, everyone waiting for what would happen next. Finally, Karen turned toward Peter, her voice hesitant. I'm sorry, she said, her words feeling foreign in her mouth. I shouldn't have spoken to you like that. Peter blinked in surprise. He hadn't expected an apology, but after a moment he gave her a small nod. It's okay, he said softly. Keanu watched the exchange, his face unreadable. Then, with a small smile, he turned back to Peter. What do you think? First day lessons learned? Peter let out a small laugh. Yeah, definitely more than I expected. The tension in the store seemed to ease as some customers chuckled. The moment had shifted from conflict to something deeper. Understanding. Karen, still embarrassed, gave a small nod before grabbing her bag. She didn't say anything else as she hurried toward the exit, but her face showed something Keanu had seen before in people who had learned a hard lesson. Reflection. As the doors closed behind her, Keanu turned back to Peter. Now, he said with a grin, let's finish checking out these groceries, shall we? With Karen gone, the store returned to its usual rhythm, but something had shifted. The weight that had pressed down on Peter just moments ago had lifted, replaced by something new. Pride. He looked up at Keanu, still struggling to believe what had just happened. Thank you, Peter said, his voice steadier now, for standing up for me. Keanu smiled. You didn't need me to stand up for you, Peter. You were already doing great on your own. I just made sure everyone else saw it too. Peter's cheeks flushed with gratitude. He had spent most of his life feeling like people overlooked him or doubted his abilities. But now, because of Keanu, the entire store had seen him for who he really was. A hard-working employee, just like everyone else. The cashier, who had stood awkwardly by during the whole ordeal, finally spoke. Hey, Peter, she said with a smile. You did a great job handling that. You stayed professional even when she was rude to you. I don't think I would have handled it that well. Peter grinned, the praise warming him from the inside. Thanks, he said, feeling a confidence he hadn't had before. Keanu turned back to his own groceries, casually placing items on the conveyor belt. So, how do you like working here so far? He asked Peter. Peter thought about it for a moment before smiling. Honestly, I think I'm going to love it. The customers around them chuckled, clearly impressed by the young man's resilience. The energy in the store had completely changed. What started as a moment of cruelty had turned into a lesson in kindness and respect. As Keanu paid for his items, he turned back to Peter one last time. Remember, it's not about how fast you bag groceries or how perfect you do your job. It's about the effort you put in and the kindness you show. That's what makes a difference. Peter nodded, taking in every word. Keanu grabbed his bags, gave Peter a final encouraging smile, and walked toward the exit. But before he left, he turned back and gave the young man a thumbs up. Peter straightened his posture, his shoulders back, his confidence shining through. This was only his first day. But, thanks to Keanu Reeves, it was one he would never forget. As Keanu walked out of the store, the energy he left behind lingered. Customers who had witnessed the scene continued to whisper among themselves, reflecting on what they had just seen. Some shook their heads at Karen's behavior, while others felt inspired by Keanu's calm but powerful response. Peter, now standing a little taller, continued working, but something had changed. Customers smiled at him more warmly, some offering small words of encouragement. You handled that really well, kid, one older man said as Peter packed his groceries. Another woman gave him a kind smile. I have a nephew with Down syndrome. Seeing you here, working hard, makes me so happy. Keep going, you're doing great. Peter's heart swelled. He had started the day feeling nervous and out of place. But now he felt seen, not just as an employee, but as someone who mattered. Meanwhile, Keanu's presence in the store did not go unnoticed online. A few customers who had recorded the interaction uploaded videos to social media with captions like, Keanu Reeves teaches a rude customer a lesson in kindness. Keanu stands up for grocery store employee with Down syndrome. What a legend. This is why we love Keanu Reeves. Within hours, the video went viral, gaining millions of views. People flooded the comments with messages of support for Peter and praise for Keanu's actions. One comment read, "The world needs more people like Keanu, not just celebrities, all of us. Stand up for others when they need it." Another user wrote, Peter, if you're reading this, you're an inspiration. Never let anyone make you feel like you don't belong. As the story spread, it became more than just a viral moment. It became a lesson, a reminder that kindness always wins. By the next day, the viral video had made its way to major news outlets. Headlines read, "Keanu Reeves defends grocery store employee from discrimination. His response inspires millions." Hollywood star stands up for worker with Down syndrome, teaches a powerful lesson on respect. Peter's manager was caught off guard when reporters began calling the store, asking about the incident. The attention was overwhelming, but for Peter, it felt like a dream. He never imagined that something so painful, being publicly ridiculed, would turn into something so positive. Later that afternoon, Peter received an unexpected phone call. It was from a representative of a large advocacy group that supported individuals with disabilities in the workforce. "We saw the video, Peter," the woman on the line said warmly, "and we think you're an inspiration. We'd love for you to share your story with others who might feel like they don't belong." Peter's hands trembled with excitement. "Me?" he asked, stunned. "Yes, you," the woman chuckled. "You showed incredible strength and grace in that situation. We want to help share your story, and maybe even connect you with opportunities that go beyond this job." Peter could barely process what was happening. He had just started working at the grocery store yesterday, and now he was being asked to be an advocate for others like him. And as if that wasn't surprising enough, his manager pulled him aside later that evening. "Peter, the store's owner saw the video," he said with a smile. "He's offering you a full-time position, with a raise." Peter's heart nearly burst with happiness, all because Keanu Reeves had taken a moment to stand up for him. Peter's world had turned upside down, in the best way possible. The job offer, the calls from advocacy groups, and the overwhelming support from people online made him feel something he had never fully experienced before, pride in himself. But the surprises weren't over yet. A few days later, Peter was finishing his shift when his manager approached him, holding a phone. "There's someone who wants to speak with you," he said, handing it over with a knowing smile. Peter hesitated before pressing the phone to his ear. "Hello?" A familiar warm voice responded. "Hey Peter, it's Keanu." Peter's breath caught in his throat. Mr. Reeves?" Keanu chuckled. "Just Keanu, man. I saw what's been happening since the video went viral. I just wanted to check in and see how you're doing." Peter could barely believe what he was hearing. I'm great. Everything has changed. People have been so nice, and my boss gave me a raise." "That's amazing," Keanu said, his voice genuinely happy. "You deserve all of it. You handled yourself with so much strength that day. I knew people would see that." Peter hesitated before speaking. "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't have to," Keanu said. "But I do have an idea if you're interested." Peter's heart pounded. "What is it?" "I'm working with a group that helps people with disabilities get into careers they love," Keanu explained. "We're hosting an event soon, and I'd love for you to come as a guest speaker, share your story, let people see how strong and capable you are." Peter's eyes widened. You really think people would want to hear my story?" "I don't think it," Keanu said. "I know it." For a long moment, Peter didn't know what to say. He had never imagined himself standing in front of a crowd, inspiring others. But now, with everything that had happened, maybe, just maybe, he was meant for something bigger. Finally, with a deep breath, Peter smiled. "Okay, I'll do it." Keanu's voice beamed through the phone. "That's what I like to hear. Welcome to something bigger, Peter." A few weeks later, Peter stood on a brightly lit stage, looking out at a packed auditorium filled with people from all walks of life: advocates, business leaders, individuals with disabilities, and families who had come to hear him speak. At the edge of the stage, Keanu Reeves stood off to the side, offering Peter an encouraging nod. Peter swallowed his nerves and took a deep breath. "This all started with a bad day," he began, his voice steady but emotional. "I was just trying to do my job, like anyone else. But someone saw me as less. Someone thought I wasn't good enough." The room fell silent, captivated by his words. "But then, someone else saw me too," Peter continued, glancing toward Keanu. "And instead of looking down on me, he stood with me. He reminded me, and everyone else, that we all deserve respect, no matter who we are." A few people in the audience nodded, some dabbing their eyes as Peter's sincerity filled the room. Peter smiled, his confidence growing. And now, because of that moment, I'm here. I'm not just bagging groceries, I'm standing in front of all of you telling my story. And if there's one thing I want people to take away from this, it's this. Never let anyone make you feel like you don't belong. You do. The crowd erupted into applause, a standing ovation washing over Peter as his message resonated with everyone in the room. Keanu stepped forward and gave him a firm handshake before pulling him into a quick hug. "You nailed it, Peter," he said. As Peter stepped off the stage, dozens of people came up to him, shaking his hand, thanking him for his words. His life had changed in ways he never imagined, all because one person had stood up for him when it mattered most. Keanu, watching from the sidelines, smiled with quiet pride. He knew this was more than just a speech. It was the beginning of something much bigger. And for Peter, it was just the start of a brand new future. This story reminds us that standing up for someone can change their life in ways we never expect. Have you ever witnessed or experienced a moment where kindness turned everything around? Share your story in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more inspiring tales.